This week we're getting into our next unit as we start to work on the research paper about a conspiracy theory of your choice. This, truthfully, is my favorite unit to teach. I love the concepts that we're going to dive into, and I think they're especially helpful for the time and place in which we're existing as consumers of information. In today's video lecture, we'll go through some of the vocabulary and ideas that you'll think about throughout the unit. So some of these might be words that you're familiar with, but some of them may be new. Some of them may be concepts that you're familiar with, but you don't have the exact name for what it's called. Our first vocabulary term for today is bias. You're probably familiar with this one. We know it's when we have a predisposition to feel a certain way about something. You can be biased towards groups of people who share similar traits, and often we think about this as being for or against something. And you often hear this in relation to news sources. You like a particular news source because it doesn't feel biased against the way you think. There's not what feels like unfair criticism of your perspective, and it agrees with some or all of the same ideas that you have. Bias also happens on an individual level. I could like somebody or be biased towards them when they talk about how much they love Taylor Swift because I'm also a Swiftie. I might be biased against someone who claims that they love to drink straight milk because I don't like drinking milk on its own. Obviously, these are more trivial examples, and bias can have much deeper, harsher impacts, but you get the idea. There are also different types of bias. So one type that we see pop up regularly, both in conspiracy theories and in life more broadly, is confirmation bias. We seek out and believe information that we already agree with. If I were to be someone believing a conspiracy theory, like the moon landing was faked, the lens of cognitive bias tells me that everyone who doesn't agree with me is wrong. I am only going to believe people who think the same thing as I do, because that confirms my understanding of reality. But what's a conspiracy theory? There are a couple of definitions that we get from Merriam-Webster, and they describe conspiracy theories as something that explains an event or set of circumstances as the result of a secret plot by usually powerful conspirators. Or, alternatively, something asserting that a secret of great importance is being kept from the public. Like Peter McIndoe talks about this week, lots of people can fall into believing a conspiracy theory. It's not something that only happens to other people or to dumb people. Conspiracy theories we see are often coping mechanisms for people when their reality is shaken so deeply that they have to come up with alternate explanations for things around them. So with something like 9/11, people believe that America is the strongest country on earth, and our military and our intelligence are so much better than anywhere else in the world. So we are powerful. When terrorists attack without seemingly any prior knowledge, killing thousands, it shakes that idea of reality. So how can we be the most powerful or advanced country in the world when we can be so horrifically surprised by something like that? Instead of sitting in that cognitive dissonance where there are two seemingly conflicting ideas, people turn to an explanation that feels more rational, even if it's not. Instead of admitting that perhaps there was some weakness in our national intelligence or there were flaws, we think there must be something deeper. Surely the government did this on purpose because we can't be the most advanced and suffer such great harm. That's just an example. Any of the examples we use here are not a reflection of my own opinions. Coming from a peace studies background, though, a big part of my approach to things is understanding and being able to explain that thing, even if I disagree with it. With that same attitude, then, like McIndoe addresses, we can't think of people who believe in conspiracy theories as some crazy yahoo that has no sense of intelligence. Instead, by seeing people and treating them as people, we might be able to get them to emerge from that way of thinking. Telling someone how stupid we think they are isn't a great conflict resolution strategy. Evidence, generally, we think of as something that proves a point, a claim, or a fact. Standards of what qualifies as evidence is where things can get tricky. So someone might say that there's evidence that aliens exist at Area 51 because they heard someone else who they view as credible say that they saw aliens being transported into the facility. They are valuing that person's sight as evidence, even though there might be confirmation otherwise. Or in some cases, people think that a lack of evidence is proof of a conspiracy of a conspiracy theory and evidence itself. So if you never see a baby pigeon, then the lack of baby pigeons is evidence that birds aren't real and Ronald Reagan killed them all during his presidency. In academia and in journalism, theoretically, evidence tends to be held to a different standard. These are fields that value having other people confirm or back up what we're saying. And once we have confirmation from various sources, then it can be qualified as evidence or as truth. Something that people can fall into a trap with, especially regarding evidence, is that correlation is causation. Correlation means that things follow similar trends, whereas causation means that one thing directly causes another. So a typical example of this is crime rates. In the summer, homicide rates go up. People will sometimes misinterpret this as the heat causing people to kill one another. This isn't true, though. These pieces of data might be correlated, meaning the temperature increases at the same time homicide rates increase, but that doesn't mean that the temperature causes people to commit homicide. So when you see two pieces of data put together, slow down for a second and think, are these things just correlated, or does one piece of data directly cause the other? Now, these are ideas we'll get into more in next week's video lecture, but I want to introduce them to you now. So misinformation and disinformation are two concepts that some people sometimes get confused. Misinformation you can remember because it shares the same root as the word mistake. Misinformation is when we spread false information, but we're doing so unknowingly. We're doing it mistakenly. So this is a real story from my remember of years back. My best friend heard that Ball State was shipping all of the geese off campus to IU. She didn't realize it was a joke, and she went around telling people that when they saw a goose on campus, they were supposed to call UPD so they could capture the goose and send it off. She's genuinely a very smart person, but that moment was one where she was mistakenly spreading misinformation because she missed the joke. Disinformation is when someone spreads incorrect information purposely with the intent to confuse others. So if I went around and told people that they needed to call UPD every time they saw a goose, even though I knew that was a joke, that would be disinformation. And these sorts of things can have a huge impact on what we believe. It's extra important then to double check where information is coming from and see if you can verify it in other places. Think back to the CRAP test. We learned earlier this semester to decide whether or not something is credible. We can apply that to a source before you decide whether or not to share it with others. So, especially now when it comes to AI-generated images, videos, articles, taking your time to recognize whether or not the information is legitimate is incredibly important. Keeping all of these things in mind will be of some benefit to you as you get into the bad news game activity this week. The goal of the activity is to help you see how fake news or disinformation and conspiracy theories can spread like wildfire. So you get to be the bad guy, breaking the rules and working your way up to the top. So use the knowledge of how people get manipulated to your advantage. Just don't ever use them in real life, please. If y'all become evil as a result of this, that would be quite bad. But these are all concepts that we're going to think about more in the coming weeks. But as we think about them more, I really want you to take away the ideas from the videos this week. We can't stop any of these things from happening unless we show compassion and understanding. We know that two things can be true. We can understand someone and we can disagree with them. We can read about these conspiracy theories, understand them, and know what causes people to believe in them, but that doesn't make us better than anybody else. We just finished a project about the humanization of data. This is a project where we have to remember the human element too. If we want to change things, then we have to be kind, even when it's hard or we don't want to. That's the most effective way for us to make change regarding things like this. If you've got any questions about the course content this week, please let me know.